Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reedy with Future Pastimes. I'm a board game designer, but I also love movies, and I recently saw Alien Romulus, and this is my video where I'm going to do a spoiler-filled review and analysis of Alien Romulus. I've got my Nostromo hat, so I feel like I'm in the mood and I'm ready to get into it. First and foremost, I enjoyed the movie. I had a good time watching it. There's a lot to like about the movie. And before we get into a lot of details about the review and the analysis, I figured I'd start with some context to talk a little bit about some of the other movies, how I rate them, so that you've got a better sense of what what you'll agree with me on and how you can adjust your own expectations, or especially if you've seen it, if you can see where you agree or disagree, and we can certainly get into it in the commentary afterward. So I rate the original Alien 1979 a 9 out of 10. I think it's a great movie. There's a couple of things that always bugged me that they don't hold up today, but they didn't really hold up then either. One is the headless ash effect. We could tell that it was fake as kids seeing that movie. And the other is the explosion of the Nostromo. Never really liked that effect. And I know that I'm not alone. I think we all, when we saw that, we were like, huh, that was kind of weird. So that, it was like 3 explosions, each one weirder than the one before. So for those reasons, I only give it a 9. I do enjoy the extended version of Alien a lot more than the original. So I got the quadrilogy DVD box set probably 15 years ago. I don't know how long. I've had it for a while. And I love the extended version. It has the scenes where Lambert slaps the heck out of Ripley after they get Kane into the infirmary, and then Ripley finding the bodies of Dallas and Brett and then having to burn them with the flamethrower. I think that actually adds a lot. There's a couple other little tidbits in there I wish that they had left in. There's also some stuff in the novelization. So it was interesting for me as a kid. I actually read the book before I saw the movie. It was Alan Dean Foster did the novelization. And it's pretty good. There's a couple of things in there that actually play out better than in the movie. One of them is during the scene where Dallas is in the air vents trying to flush out the alien. They're picking up his movement on the tracker, and then then the alien comes in. And what's interesting in the novelization is that they think they're picking up him first, but they're actually tracking the alien, and then they don't know which one is which. And so I like that a little bit better. I think it's fine for the movie. The other is Ash setting off the alarm when the alien is just about in the airlock and Parker's about to flush him out into outer space, and then a klaxon is sounded. And that was a scene. I'd read the book first, and I was looking forward to that scene in the movie, and it just didn't happen. And I was like, oh, what a wasted opportunity. So a 9 out of 10 for me on that one. I give James Cameron's Aliens 10 out of 10. I think that holds up just fine. I love everything about it. I think the Bishop ripped apart effect is better than the Ash ripped apart, and I think it still holds up, and it's a great movie. So I'm gonna go down with saying 8 out of 10 for Romulus. So I think it's the third best out of there, out of the 5 core Alien movies. I think the Alien versus Predator movies are more like pageants. They're in a contemporary setting, which is a little bit weird. I enjoy those for what they are. I think the first one's way better than Requiem. There's issues, clearly. But I just don't even consider them part of the Alien franchise. I don't even really want to consider Prometheus and Covenant part of the Alien franchise either. I like Covenant better. Prometheus, I think, is just not a good movie. It's really poorly conceived. I read the Alien Engineer script, and I thought that was much better. I wish they'd shot that. In terms of Alien 3, I think that is the 4th best out of them, but it's pretty close between Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. But I like Alien 3 a little bit better. but it's not a great movie, and I didn't really think any of the screenplays that almost got produced for Alien 3 were particularly good either. And maybe the William Gibson one was the best one, but I didn't love the idea that the alien is now just a virus, and you get this virus, and now an alien bursts out of a full adult alien just bursts out of your body. That just seemed really weird to me, but we're going to get back to that a little bit later on. And Alien Resurrection was just too French for me. Not that I'm anti-French, but there was just some really weird artistic choices from the French director, and so my shorthand for it is just it was too French. There are some moments in it, and again, I think the screenplay is better. I don't think the Joss Whedon screenplay is great for Alien Resurrection, but it was fine. I think that the Romulus one is a little bit better. I've got some quibbles, which we're going to get to here presently. So that's kind of where it falls into the middle. And I'm fine with that. But I think one of the things that it does do is that shows you can have a compelling alien story. You don't need to have everything's always centered around Ripley. It starts to become a little bit absurd that she can't just go, you know what, I just want to go back to Earth and get a job, even if it's working load lifters, and I'm done with the alien. It seems like if they had made another movie after Resurrection, directly afterward, it would have been Ripley-centric as well, because now you get a whole new Ripley who's a little bit alien. And I wasn't really looking forward to that. I think the Neil Blomquist, if that's or Blomkamp, the guy who did Chappie and Elysium and his best movie, which is District 9. He had an idea for one, and I would have liked to have seen that, because it was saying, you know what, Alien 3 and 4 didn't really happen, and we've got Hicks back, he's alive. I would have liked to have seen that. So I didn't love that they just killed off Hicks and Newt in the Alien 3 prison planet. Everyone is bald and looks the same. Just not a great time. But what's interesting about Romulus is that there's a lot of references to the other movies. Now, some of them are a little bit on the nose, and I didn't really like that. And that really predominantly came in the form of dialogue ripped out of mostly the first and second movie. And it started to bug me. The first time it happened, I was like, okay. Then the second time, I was like, again? And then after, there was like 4 times at least that it happened. And then I was just like, oh, this has got to stop. So I'll give you an example. And so this is spoiler filled. So, you were warned at the get-go. Early on, one of the characters is an android or a synthetic called Andy. And they refer to him as a synthetic, and he says, I prefer the term artificial person, which is a line out of Aliens that Bishop says. And so it seemed a little bit it's strained credulity for me to have him say that, but I was like, oh, all right. But then later on, he says, busy little creatures, and that's another Aliens reference. So I was like, oh, I don't love that he said that. Then you had this Rook character who was really like a different version of Ash, and they used some special effects to have Ian Holmes' likeness from 1979 pasted on. The effects are okay. It's not great. We've seen better, but we've also seen worse. They're certainly better than the Rogue One, Governor Tarkin and Princess Leia, AI face mapping swap out. So it's better than those, but it's still not perfectly crisp. I saw this in IMAX, so it was big and in my face. Maybe on a smaller screen, it's a little bit more palatable. But there was a point late in the movie where they had him say, I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies, which were the last line of Ash in the original movie before they unplug him and torch what's left of him. And I was like, oh. But then the coup de grace there for me was they had Andy He kills this alien that is threatening Rain, who's our main character, and then he says, "Get away from her, you bitch." And I was just like, oh, if he had said something like, "Back off, bitch," then we could have gotten a like, oh, that's clearly a reference to the other one, but at least it has its own life. And I wish that they'd done that with all of these lines, had him not say, "I prefer the term artificial person," but maybe something else, along those lines, and have the Rook character not say, "I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies." To have him say something else, like, "You're not going to make it, but your sacrifice is appreciated by the company." It's in the same vein, and it's a little bit patronizing, which was the point. So that I would have liked that better. So those were my biggest quibbles with the movie, where all of these, I guess they were counting it as fan service, but it was really lazy and ham-handed, and I just didn't like it. And I would love for that to not exist. If we get into, all right, let's talk about the story. I thought the story was just fine. So you have these characters, they're on a colony, and it's not LV-426, which I was very glad that it wasn't just the same planet, and we were like trying to figure out or retconning, how are they not, did they go to the derelict ship and then everyone just forgot about it? What was the deal there? So it's a different colony, and you see the kind of not user-friendly, almost brutal conditions that the colonists are living there, working for Weyland-Yutani, and they're a little bit hopeless. They're on a planet where there's just no sunrise. There's never daytime, just because of the atmosphere and the type of planet it is. So our characters, they're all young, and their parents have met unfortunate ends and in accidents or disease, living on this colony, and just when they think that they're going to be able to, they've worked off it's almost like indentured servitude. Then they're like, nope, the things have changed, and you're stuck here for another 5 years or 10 years or what have you. And so they know it's inevitable at this point that they're going to get some kind of miner's disease and die. So they're looking for a way out, and they realize that there's this derelict space station in orbit around their planet, and it's the Romulus. Although it's actually two sides of the station. There's a Romulus side and a Remus side. So it's interesting. I didn't think there was like a great, like, oh, this is a really interesting connection to Roman history, mythology, where that's who Romulus and Remus are. They were raised by wolves. It's a little bit of a stretch, where I guess the wolves could be considered the aliens, and I don't know. It's a little bit of it's too much of a stretch. I'm not sure what they were trying to get out of it, but maybe you have some theories. Share with me your thoughts on that in the comments. But the station's up there, and what they're looking for are cryotubes, because they've got the means to leave the planet, but they don't have, it takes 9 years to get to another colony, and they don't have that much food and supplies, so they need the cryotubes. And they suspect that there's cryotubes on the station, so they want to go up there, they want to get them, and then hop into them and fly to the colony that they've always wanted to go to, where conditions will be better. There's at least sunlight to look at, so they'll take their chances. And there's 5 of them, and then Andy the android, who later on finds out would not be welcome on this colony. And so that's a point of contention between him and his sort of foster sister, Rain, who's our main character. So they need Rain to go on this mission, because they actually need Andy to be able to access, since he is a Weyland-Yutani product, he can access the cryotubes and the compartments within the station, accessing the station itself, so that they can get up there. Now, what up there at the very beginning of the movie, we see that a scout ship has found the remains of the Nostromo, and it's a Weyland-Yutani ship, and they find the original alien just sort of crusted up in an asteroid. It's kind of interesting how that was, but they grab the asteroid, they cut it open, they get the alien out, and now they're all set. It's what they've always wanted, and they can start studying it and producing whatever it is they're after: bioweapons, miracle cures, all sorts of stuff. And that's the work that's going to be conducted on the Romulus station. But for whatever reason, there's nobody on the station, and it's abandoned. And that would have been my first question. But I guess they see Weyland-Yutani as kind of a wasteful, company. They use up everything, so they're not too surprised about that. But it doesn't take long before they start seeing some signs of some suspicious activity. At one point, they find what's left of another synthetic. It seems to have been ripped in half, and it's next to openings in the compartment that were clearly burned by acid down several stories. But at that point, they're like, look, we're here for a reason. They find the cryotubes, but they don't have enough fuel to get them the whole time. So they're using the equipment that they've brought in order to try to track down some more fuel for the cryotubes. And that leads them to a chamber that is being kept cool because it is a stasis for face huggers. And so they go in there and they yank out the cryo fuel, and it triggers the compartment to close because this is a highly secure area. They can't quite get out. It leads to some follies where they're trying to figure out how to get out. But what's happening there is the temperature is going up, and it's thawing out the cryogenically frozen face huggers. And now stuff is going crazy. Very good scene, very tense. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. They get to the point where they're like, all right, well, they've got the cryotubes. They maybe have enough fuel, but then they start to run into trouble and aliens in different stages. There's a lot that's been going on in this station. And so, plot-wise, I thought it was fine. The characters, and I've seen some other reviews like, oh, the characters are bland and forgettable. I didn't have a big issue with the characters. I think that Rain and Andy are very interesting characters. Then you have the other characters. So there's a guy who is sort of our male lead, and he is. You can tell that maybe there's some interest between him and Rain. Maybe it's unrequited love or not. There's his sister, Kay, who confides in Rain that she is pregnant. So she really wants to get out. And then there's this cousin, Bjorn, who's kind of a douche. But, they explain why he is the way he is, mostly negative towards Andy because he is a synthetic. So that was fine with that. But a couple of things confused me a little bit. So you had Kay, Kay and her brother. And the brother and the cousin, well, first of all, the brother and the sister, they don't have the same accent. So the brother has kind of a Cockney accent. There's something under the water. But she doesn't. And so that was a little confusing to me. I'm like, I don't understand. Are they adopted? Did they live apart? They're not old enough for that to have happened. And then you have the cousin who has the same accent, and he's a skinny white guy with dark hair, just like the brother. They're very similar. In fact, during the trailers, I thought they were the same character. I didn't realize that they were two different characters until we were like, oh, okay, this is somebody else watching the movie. So I thought they should have done something about that. Give him a different look, more of a distinct persona, so that they are easier to tell apart. I'm not sure. I was confused for a while. I thought that Kay was Bjorn's sister, not the other guy, but he seemed to be really upset when she was trapped, and Rain tells Andy that she's pregnant. And I was like, is he the father? And I was like, no, I guess he's the brother. And I'm still making assumptions. I'm assuming that was the case because I had thought that he was interested in Rain. And, and I'm pretty sure that's how it was supposed to play out. But that could have been a little bit clearer. And The fact that they had two different accents, that's weird. That's a weird choice. I don't know why you would do that. And then you would have this other guy who sounds and acts to some degree and looks just like the other male character. So what about the other references? So there are some other references to the other movies. Now some of them are, like I said, a lot of them were very on the nose, and so I didn't love that. Some of them were much more subtle, maybe even to the point where perhaps I'm reading more into it than was actually in there. But there were two things that reminded me, at least, of Alien 3, and one of them is that you had this other character. I can't remember her name, but she was the pilot. She's the one who very clearly gets the face hugger on her face in the trailer, and certainly in the movie. She's sporting a very short haircut, which reminded me a lot of Ripley's look in Alien 3. The fact that they were all sort of trapped on that colony planet made them seem like prisoners a little bit. Again, that's definitely a stretch. But the other thing that reminded me of Alien 3, and it wasn't the movie so much as it was the William Gibson screenplay. And that was the first screenplay that was commissioned to be Alien 3. And again, it's the one where the alien, the scientists get a hold of the alien on this station in his screenplay, and they synthesize something, and they end up making this bioweapon that makes, anyone who gets infected with it becomes an alien, basically ripping off their skin, and then they're a full-grown alien. But at one point, they find that Rook, and Rook kind of explains to them that they have been working on synthesizing some elements of the alien in order. They saw the alien as a perfect organism, and they were like, humans should be the perfect organism. So we wanted to find a way to do that, and so you ended up injecting this compound that was a little bit like the black goo from Prometheus. So I think there was a clear connection to that as well. But it had the unintended effect of having some sort of alien reaction come burst out. So they show this. You can see this video of a rat that had been crushed, but regenerated and restored itself because of being injected with the alien compound. But then something, alien burst out of it. So at some point, Kay does the same thing. She injects herself, and during what's almost what would normally be the denouement of the movie, almost an act 4, if you will. She's the one that's pregnant, and so she's wounded, and she's having a hard time trying to get back to the ship and back to the cryotube. So she injects herself with it because they were led to believe it could help out. They were going to inject her earlier, and Rain was like, "Don't do it because I don't trust it," which is a good instinct because it was definitely not a miracle cure. So right as she gets put into the cryotube, she starts to have a reaction, and it's almost like labor. In fact, her belly has gotten quite big, and then she squeezes out like a seed pod. And so Rain is trying to get rid of it. It cracks open a little bit, and you can see in there's a human-looking entity in there, like a baby. But this whole thing where this injection really reminded me of that. So I have a feeling that they're familiar with the whole bizarre evolution of Alien 3. I expect that, professional filmmakers, they immerse themselves in all the Alien lore, even the stuff that didn't make it to the screen. So I felt like there was some kind of a reference to that, but maybe not. Again, I could be reading more into it. But what's interesting about that, and what really to me felt like a clear nod to Alien Resurrection, was you had this hybrid. So it was part human, part alien. It got big really fast, so it was baby-sized originally, but then 5 minutes later, it's 7 feet tall. That seemed a little bit fast to me. I would have loved to have had a little more time pass so that it could have gotten bigger, which leads me to another part of the alien life cycle, which I'm going to address here in a second. But you had this baby alien thing get up, and it had a look that the face looked very much like the engineers in Prometheus. So I think that was purposeful, but it also clearly reminded me of the newborn, the new alien that came in Alien Resurrection. So I hated that design in that movie, the French one. You had this, you know, alien thing with eyes, but it had these sad puppy dog eyes, and it was like, oh, and I really just, it bugged me, and I didn't like the design at all. And I didn't like the puppetry of it. It just seemed really hokey to me. It didn't hold up. It's a practical effect, and I know there's been a big deal about how Fede Alvarez has been using practical effects for Romulus. I think they did a great job. Supposedly he wanted to bring in a lot of the same team that worked on Aliens. And practical effects in that movie are fantastic. That's another movie where I think the extended version is much better than the theatrical release. But the look of it, of this hybrid in Romulus, was clearly a nod, I think, to the newborn in Alien Resurrection. It's a much better design, very creepy, very unsettling, and just better executed. So yeah, I enjoyed that. At first, when it was happening, and she had it came out of her. And you saw the baby face in the pod. I was like, I don't know what I think about this. It seems a little. I was like, oh, all right. But it grew on me, and I was like, yeah, that was fine. I liked that. So earlier I mentioned the life cycle of the alien. So we know that it starts off, it's in the egg. You've got the face hugger that comes out. It gets on your face. It plants the embryo, if you will, down your throat, and then you've got the chest burster that bites its way out of you. That's the other thing, like the French movie where the Leland Orser is the guy who they knew he had an alien in him, and they were like, maybe we can get him to cryo and freeze him before it comes out. But when it was coming out, he grabbed a hold of the evil doctor, and it burst out of his chest and through the guy's head. And I was like, it's not a missile. And so I really hated that. It was like, it's eating its way out of you. It's not, spring-loaded. But anyway. So yeah, you have the life cycle, egg, face hugger, chest burster. At some point you find it's shed its skin, and then suddenly it's 7 feet tall. So in Romulus, they added in this other step between it's shed its initial skin and it's a full adult. And they had what was very cocoon-like thing stuck to a wall, and apparently it was getting bigger while it was in there. So the characters find this. They stick basically a cattle prod into it to try to take it out, but it ends up beating up Bjorn, and then it drops enough acid out of its cocoon onto him to kill him, which was a very inventive way to take a character out. So I approve. I thought that was great. But then, yes, it comes out. And the effect of it coming out of it was really interesting looking, and it was a tense scene. Kay's trying to get the door open and get out of that room before it's completely emerged. And so that's a new thing that Romulus has added to the alien mythology, because before there was no real indication. And I'm not sure that you needed it. I always just assumed that, yeah, it's peeling off its skin because it was getting a lot bigger. And in the first movie, Brett finds that first layer. And my assumption was that it would just probably do that maybe a couple more times over the course of an hour or 2 hours. And then voila, it gets to its adult, mature size. But, there's always been a lot of people like the Dark Horse comic books did a lot of speculating about a number of things in the alien life cycle, and as well as the space jockey life cycle. But in terms of the movies, it's always been an outstanding question. I'm not sure how successful the alien life form would be if, after it's burst out of somebody's chest, it has to go off and hide in cocoon for a half an hour in order to get to adult size. Seems like it would be very vulnerable at that point. So I have mixed feelings about it, but it looked great. And so I enjoyed that segment. At the end of the day, I thought it was great. Probably one of the best segments, though, in the movie was the ZeroG. I'm shooting the aliens and there's acid blood flying everywhere. So they knew that if they had these pulse rifles, which is a nice nod to the second movie, and it was nice that they were different. They seemed like they were a little bit better. So I'm not sure how that technology arc works, where we've got, hey, it's got more rounds in it, and it also helps you to aim. But then, 10 years later, we're using something that's less sophisticated. That seemed like seems that should be the other way around. So I questioned that choice, but I liked that they were like, all right, we've got these pulse rifles. But they knew if they started shooting up these aliens and the bleeding acid, there was going to be a hull breach. So they, when their aliens are cornering them, Rain takes out the gravity and then starts wailing away on all these aliens. But it does leave these ZeroG floating puddles of acid blood, and then she's trying to float in between them and dodge them. It was a great sequence. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was great. The stuff up that elevator shaft also was pretty awesome. And I love that sequence as well. There were some people who feel like, yeah, that elevator sequence seems like it's a clear nod to Aliens. That's certainly a possibility. There was a lot of stuff displays on screens, like the classic Purge screen that was in not only in the original Alien, but also in Blade Runner, which was also directed by Ridley Scott. They recycled that and recycled another screen graphic for Blade Runner. But it was nice that you had a lot of the graphics and the sounds, the kind of sound from the first movie showing up in places. There's some references to Alien Isolation, so very popular. I have it on the Xbox One, and I've played through a lot of it, not to the finish. It got to a very frustrating point in the game where there's androids everywhere, and if you get in their way, they basically kill you. And so I haven't gotten past that. I have to get back to that and give it a look. But there were things in the Romulus station that were very similar to the Sevastopol station from that game, and even I think, and this I didn't really notice it when I watched it, but somebody had mentioned it on the internet that like the places in the game where you go to save your game, one of those consoles was on the station, and so that I think is a brilliant touch. I love that. Of course, the little Dippy bird from the first movie showed up early in the movie as well on the outpost, as well as the same bar sign, a sort of neon sign. It's the exact same one as the one that we see in the second movie. So those kinds of references I loved. I just hated that they were using that same dialogue. There seemed to be no point to it other than, oh, we remember that line? Well, here it is again. And just like, I did not love that. But everything else, I loved it. Thought the action was great. We got to see some new stuff from the Alien. The alien effects were good. The aliens were scary. The movie was tense. It had a couple of good jumps to it, and which, I enjoy. And I thought the characters were fine. I thought the character arcs were all right as well. You knew that most of those characters were not going to be surviving. So it's just a matter of, are they distinct? Are they interesting enough? And so yeah, I thought for the most part, they were fine as well. It's mostly Rain and Andy who are they're the central characters, and I think they were clearly the most interesting. And I enjoyed the way that they were written. So this is a movie that I know I'll watch again and again. I've seen the original Alien, I don't know, probably 20 times, and Aliens even more. And in fact, I rewatched the 79 Alien a couple of days before seeing Romulus, since I know that Romulus takes place right after it in terms of timeline before Aliens. I may watch Aliens again here pretty soon. It's a great movie, 10 out of 10. So what's not to like? But yeah, I like that extended. In terms of extended, there's the extended cut in the quadrilogy for Alien 3, and I think that's better too, although they didn't complete the effects. But the effects, even on the theatrical one, were a little bit wonky in some places. But yeah, that there was just a more interesting story. But yeah, it's not a great movie. I'd probably give it like a 6. maybe 6.5 and a 6 on Alien Resurrection. I love the underwater stuff. You know, Ron Perlman is always great to see in a movie. Yeah, just some of that, some of the choices in there were not good. They were not good choices. And there were some silly segments that I did not enjoy in that fourth movie. So it's refreshing that we've got now more Alien movies, at least in the core, that are really good than that are not so good. It was 50-50 before, but now we've got 3/5 of the 5 aliens. 3 out of 5 is pretty good. You know, again, the Alien versus Predator movies, you got to treat them as their own thing. Somebody else had mentioned that Romulus is kind of like the prey for Predator. And I think that's a pretty apt comparison. I think comparing Prey and Romulus, I think Prey comes out ahead a little bit. I think I like Prey a little bit more than I like Romulus, but it's very close. Romulus is quite good. I will probably see it again in the theaters. I mentioned this in my spoiler review. I saw it in IMAX. It didn't feel like I didn't get the same kind of awe-inspiring experience as when I saw Dune Part 2 in IMAX. IMAX is the best format to watch Dune 2, and I've seen it a couple of times on various screens. I think that Romulus will be fine on any big screen. I have an absurdly large TV, so I look forward to getting the DVD for that and putting it on the shelf with the quadrilogy and watching it again and again. But yeah, I'll probably see it again in the theaters, especially if anyone else in my family wants to see it. I saw it with a buddy of mine, and but yeah, the rest of them haven't seen it. They're not as crazy about Alien as I am. My daughter, maybe more so. She's probably already seeing it on her own as it is. So let me know your thoughts in the comments on all the stuff that I've raised in terms of, you know, you don't have to get into too much about how you disagree with me over Alien versus Aliens. That's fine. I'm not going to argue with you on that. But let's talk about Romulus. Were you as bothered as I was about the dialogue, or did that appeal to you? Maybe you're the target audience for that sort of thing. I just wish they'd done something a little bit differently. It was just too on the nose, using those same lines. I loved the other references, whether they were real or in my mind, a lot more than those. I enjoyed the Rook character, and I was fine with that. I was fine with the Ian Holm. You know, it's nice that his estate's still getting some bank. I guess at this point, he could start showing up in any movie now. So maybe he'll show up in that Time Bandits show and add a little zest to that. Probably not. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on that and on the characters, on the effects, on the pacing, the story. Do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts? Feel free to share those in the comments. We'll get into it if we have to. But there you have it. I recommend it. If you haven't seen it and you watch this video, I'm not sure what you were... It seems weird to me. You know, I did the spoiler-free one. It's also much shorter, but absolutely, let me know your thoughts. And if this convinces you to see it, then good for you. But if it convinces you to see it and you didn't like it, yeah, tell me why. I'm curious what was going on in your brain for that. That's it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.